Good evening and welcome to the Connecticut Department of Transportation's Public Information Meeting for installation of Centerline rumble strips. This project will install Centerline rumble strips on eligible roadways throughout Connecticut in 2025 construction season. Tonight, we'll be presenting specifically on the need for Centerline rumble strips in East Hampton on Route 196, Skinner Street and Young Street, as well as highlighting the safety benefits that comes with its installation. My name is Yi Lo, and I am an engineer at the Connecticut Department of Transportation. I want to thank everyone for taking the time to join us. We hope our presentation will be informative, and we hope to answer your questions and concerns during tonight's question and answer session. By the end of tonight's meeting, we hope you will have a better understanding on the importance and benefit of installing Centerline rumble strips. If you are viewing this presentation on Zoom, you have the option to view captions or subtitles for this presentation. To turn on this feature, select the CC button at the lower right corner of your screen to turn on the captioning. Then choose the language by selecting the setting wheel next to the CC button. Select the captions, subtitles, and select the desired language. Before we start the presentation and introduce the project team, I would like to go over a few housekeeping items and explain the format for tonight's meeting. Our presentation will last approximately 20 minutes. And once it is completed, we will host a live question and answer session. You will have 3 ways of communicating with us during the live Q&A. The first method is to ask your question directly into the Zoom event. You can ask a question by clicking on the Q&A icon at the bottom of the meeting page and type in your question in the pop-up window. You can also ask a question by sending an email to DOT2025 CLRS-easthampton@ct.gov or by leaving a voicemail at 860-594-2020. The comment period will be open through January the 30th, 2025, and you can send an email or leave a voicemail until that date. We also have a project web page which contains the same information that I've previously explained on how to provide comments or ask questions. The web page address is portal.ct.gov/DOT172-537 East Hampton. A recording of tonight's presentation, including the live event Q&A, will be stored at CTDOT VPIM archive. Lastly, we would greatly appreciate it if you can fill out the very brief feedback survey that is on the project's webpage. The survey will help CTDOT improve these public information meetings going forward. Again, the project webpage is portal.ct.gov/DOT172-537 East Hampton. Here is a civil rights flyer that's also available on the website at CTDOT Office of Equal Opportunity and Diversity. Finally, I would like to reinforce that no person shall, on the basis of race, color, or national origin, be excluded from participation or subject to discrimination in the development of this project. I would now like to introduce those from the department who are participating in this meeting. Natasha Fatou is the State Safety Engineer for the State of Connecticut and the Principal Engineer of CTDOT's Traffic Safety Unit. Blanche Sok is the Supervising Engineer of CTDOT's Traffic Safety Unit and the Project Manager for this project. Rob Smith is a transportation engineer, also from safety unit, and also the lead project engineer for this project. Shane McLean is also an engineer with the safety engineering unit and will be monitoring the project email address and calling voicemail for any questions or comments during the live Q&A. Once again, I'm Yilou, an engineer in the safety engineering unit, and the primary presenter for tonight's meeting. I will also be answering any questions you may have during the live Q&A session. Tonight, we will go through the project description and purpose of this project, as well as objectives that we hope to achieve. Then we will give a thorough description of what Centerline rumble strips are, and why Centerline rumble strips are a good safety countermeasure for this roadway segment. Next, I will discuss the installation process of Centerline rumble strips. Lastly, we will go over the cost and timeline for this project before we wrap everything up with the live Q&A discussion. The Connecticut Department of Transportation resurfaced Route 196, Skinner Street, and Young Street in East Hampton through 2021 resurfacing program. As highlighted on the aerial image, the sections from 0.5 miles south of Old Young Street to 0.25 miles north of Quiet Woods Road, and from Route 16 Middletown Avenue to Main Street were identified as being candidates for the installation of Centerline rumble strips, a combined length of 1.5 miles. I will go over what qualifies this section of Route 196 as eligible later in the presentation. Centerline rumble strips are discontinued at intersections with public streets, such as Old Young Street, because vehicles use the intersectional area when they are turning into and out of these side roads. So what are Centerline rumble strips? Centerline rumble strips are grooves within the double yellow centerline that produce sound and vibration inside the vehicle when the tires come into contact with them. The sound and vibration alerts the driver that they have departed from their lane and gives the driver an opportunity to recover. Centerline rumble strips are different than the grooves along the edges of cities' interstate highways. The grooves for Centerline rumble strips are placed near the middle of the roadway, and they are not as deep as the ones on highways. They are shaped like a wave, so they produce much less sound outside the vehicle. Why do we use Centerline rumble strips? The audible and vibratory warning greatly improves the chances that a driver will quickly and safely return to their lane. Centerline rumble strips also have the additional benefit of helping drivers navigate during poor weather conditions such as fog, snow, and rain, when pavement markings are obscured. The Federal Highway Administration has identified Centerline rumble strips as a proven safety countermeasure to address head-on and sideswipe opposite direction crashes. As I mentioned in the last slide, Centerline rumble strips are an example of a proven safety countermeasure according to the Federal Highway Administration, along with the other countermeasures shown on this slide. Additional information can be found here by Googling proven safety countermeasure and clicking on the first link. The department's safety engineering unit also has an informational website which provides additional information specific to Connecticut. In 2023, there were 36 fatalities and 2,195 injuries from head-on and opposite direction sideswipe crashes on city non-freeway roadways. Centerline rumble strips help reduce these types of crashes, which could be attributed to distracted or fatigued driving. Over 25% of people injured in crashes associated with vehicles crossing the centerline were under the age of 25. Route 196 has relatively low traffic volume. Despite this, in the last 3 years, there were 9 crashes on the segments of Route 196 where CRS is planned. Looking at the crash reports, 4 of those crashes may have been prevented by centerline rumble strips, and 1 of those crashes resulted in severe injury, while another one involved a young driver. It is also important to note that near misses are not recorded, so they may be happening, but there is no information about them. Centerline rumble strips specifically reduce the most severe types of crashes. Studies have shown centerline rumble strips reduce head-on crashes by as much as 50%, run-off-the-road crashes by 46%, fatal crashes by 51%, and serious injury crashes by 41%. Even if there wasn't a history of crashes on these segments of 196, the point of the centerline rumble strips is to reduce the possibility of future crashes. We can't predict where exactly future crashes will happen, so a countermeasure like centerline rumble strips, which can be installed on miles of road at a time, can be very effective at reducing crashes system-wide. The department in recent years has taken a proactive approach trying to prevent crashes from happening rather than a reactive approach, which is fixing the problem after a crash has already happened. Centerline rumble strips is a highly effective, low-cost proactive approach intended to reduce lane departure crashes, and will aid in continuing to keep these crashes from happening. So what does it mean to take a proactive approach to prevent crashes with centerline rumble strips? This involves not just installing centerline rumble strips where crashes happened in the past, but looking for all centerline rumble strips eligible locations in the state road system to prevent crashes in the future. This is because individual crash locations can vary widely year to year. To show this, the next 3 slides show separate snapshots of crashes on roads in East Hampton over 3 years. This is taken from the UCOM crash data repository, which has publicly available crash data. On this map, each green dot represents 1 crash. The red blobs show where more than 1 crash occurred. As the slide changes to the next year of crash data, keep an eye on the location of the crashes. There are particular red hotspots at major intersections, but away from intersections, the locations of single crashes can change year to year. This first slide shows the crash locations in 2021, and now I will move to the next year. This next slide shows the crash locations in 2022. You may have noticed that even though the red hotspots stayed the same, individual green dots can move from the previous year. Remember, these green spots are the locations of single crashes. Keep an eye on those green dots to see if they move again when I go to the next slide. Now, these are the crash locations from 2023. As you can see, outside of the major crash hotspots, the location of single crashes appears to move from year to year and is mostly random. The best way to address the fact that single crashes can happen in an unpredictable way is to install safety countermeasures like centerline rumble strips system-wide. Installing centerline rumble strips systematically across the state is considered a proactive treatment. intended to reduce lane departure crashes and keep these crashes from happening. This way, if a driver is unfamiliar with the road, is distracted, or is inexperienced, when they cross the center line unintentionally, they are at least warned and given an opportunity to correct themselves. Centerline rumble strips are being used throughout the country now, including all the states in the Northeast US. Connecticut started installing Centerline rumble strips in 2018 and shoulder line rumble strips on limited access highways since 1994. Connecticut has installed over 600 miles of Centerline rumble strips on state roads and over 90 miles on local roads, with more being proposed every year. Lastly, there is a link to a video titled Rumble Strips, The Sweet Sound of Safety, which is a short YouTube video uploaded by Federal Highway Administration and will be available once the presentation is posted online. It can also be found on YouTube by typing in the underlined keywords. Here's a map about Centerline rumble strips in Connecticut. As you can see on this map, the majority of towns in Connecticut have had Centerline rumble strips installed. Any town shown in green already has Centerline rumble strips, whether it's on a town or state-owned roadway. And towns in blue are programmed to have them installed. And towns shown in white do not currently have Centerline rumble strips. But this will likely change in the near future as additional roads are repaved. The department goes through a screening process based on FHWA guidance to determine Centerline rumble strips eligibility for each road, including take a look at traffic volume, including roads with an average daily traffic of at least 2,000 vehicles per day, ensuring that the pavement is in good condition and less than 3 years old. The roadway is to have a minimum of 14 feet of width from the center line to the edge of pavement. This makes sure that there is plenty of room for drivers to maneuver without going over the centerline rumble strips. The roadway generally has a posted speed limit of 35 miles per hour or greater. Lastly, there should be a low residential density. If there are some homes along a segment, we try to ensure that the majority are at least 100 feet from the edge of the road. The average cost of installing centerline rumble strips is about $1 per linear foot. This means the total cost of centerline rumble strips is approximately $7,000 for the 1.5 mile long segments in East Hampton. The cost will be covered by 100% state funds, so there's no cost to the town, with construction anticipated to take place during this year's construction season. These are just a couple of pictures taken from construction, showing part of the milling and the grooving process. Construction vehicles work and travel at 2 to 3 miles per hour to install the centerline rumble strips. The work is done during non-rush hours, and the center lines are painted shortly after. And with that, I want to thank you for your time listening to our presentation. And now it's time to hear from you in our live question and answer session. Remember, you can use the Zoom Q&A to send us live questions. You can also email us any questions or comments via the project email address, or leave a voicemail message on the calling phone line. We also want to encourage you to take our very brief feedback survey to help us improve how we deliver these virtual public information meetings. So, with that being said, do we have any questions from the email, voicemail, or the chat for us to answer?
Thank you, Yi, for that informative presentation. So we have a few people here, it looks like, from the town. if there are any questions, as you mentioned earlier, there are a few ways of reaching out to us directly. You know, some questions can be answered right now if we could do it through Zoom, the chat. And if there are questions that people have within the next 2 weeks, you know, feel free to reach out by email or phone as shown below, and the project webpage is listed here. It is portal.ct.gov/DOT172-537 East Hampton. See if we have any questions. So it looks like we did get an answer, or I'm sorry, a question earlier from an email. It looks like the concern is that the noise being generated with the installation of the rumble strips. There are concerns about that.
Yeah, I can answer that one. This is Rob Smith. I was one of the people you mentioned on the design team for the rumble strip projects. So if we're talking about the actual installation of the rumble strips, that's just a moving operation. The vehicles move along as they cut them into the pavement. The work is done during non-rush hours. And those vehicles move at about 2 to 3 miles an hour as they're installing the rumble strips. So for these two segments, you know, that would take less than a day. So very little disruption to any sort of traffic. And for a short time. If we're talking about, you know, after they've been installed, you know, and the noise that they make, the point of these rumble strips, especially, you know, the sinusoidal wavy ones that you showed picture of in the presentation, the point of them is that they make a lot of noise inside the vehicle, but very little noise outside. What we try to do when we install is we try to make sure that there's not very many residences within 100 feet of the road. We would look for low density there, which is what we see on Route 196. That way, if someone does happen to cross the center line, you know, the chances of them doing that in front of someone's house are very low. What we know is, you know, after we install them, you know, once people, if they're going to swerve over the center line, then they're going to look to avoid that again. So the whole idea of the rumble strips is to minimize people going over it. So, you know, we expect there to be not a lot of disruption, you know, after we install them. In terms of you know, how much you hear from outside the vehicle. You know, we've gone to a lot of locations where we've installed them. And often, you know, I sometimes can't hear, you know, if people are driving over them. I can't hear over the ambient noise. I basically have to be standing next to the road to know that someone is driving over the rumble strips. So generally, you know, after they've been installed, I actually can't think of a complaint that we've gotten after they've been installed. Usually the concerns are ahead of time. And then, you know, obviously someone going over the rumble strips and making some noise is definitely a lot less disruptive than a potential alternative, which is a crash. So that's one of the things that, you know, that we're looking to avoid, and that, you know, we think that the rumble strips will prevent, and will actually be a much more preferable thing. So it's why we like them as a countermeasure. But yeah, if there's more questions on that, people, you know, if they want more specifics, I can let them know. But that's that's my answer for that one.
All right. Thank you, Rob. It was a very comprehensive answer. So hopefully, you know, that can put the citizen at ease who asked that question. We have another one that came in from Lori Turner. The question is, are rumble strips considered a measure to reduce speed?
So the answer is no. Rumble strips is not a speed deterrent. This is a countermeasure, as Robert just mentioned. This is to prevent crossover crashes.
All right, thank you, Yi, for that response. We do have another question that just came in from Dennis Westner. The question is, how many people are on this call?
As far as I can see, there are 5 people.
Yeah, Mr. Wisner, it looks like we have 5 people from the town on this call right now. Okay, that one was a quick, easy one. We have another question here that came in through, it looks like email. Rumble strips and motorcycles do not go well together. Add in some freshly painted lines and some wet surfaces, and the coefficient of friction between the tires and road surfaces greatly decrease, not to mention the vibrations encountered. There's the question.
And so I want to go back to this slide to show you the photo of the rumble strips. As you can see from the photo, the grooves for centerline rumble strips are not as deep as those ones on the highway shoulder lines. There is no evidence that suggests that the centerline rumble strips will cause a stability issue or friction decrease for motorcyclists and other two-wheeled vehicles if they are only on the centerline rumble strips momentarily to cross. Instead, rider or driver behavior has been shown as a center factor in crashes involving those types of vehicles. Riding on the centerline rumble strips is not recommended and shouldn't be done. The Federal Highway Administration has allowed centerline rumble strips to be installed in areas with existing passing zones. Additionally, there are breaks in the centerline rumble strips at intersections with the town roads, and rumble strips are also less noticeable when making left turns where there aren't breaks.
So I'll add to that real quickly. So I ride, so I understand the concern with the question, and just the concern with the centerline rumble strips. But as you mentioned, you're like realistically, so first of all, they are allowed in passing zones, and that is FHWA approved. So there has been testing on it, and essentially, if you do pass over a rumble strip, I mean the amount of time you spend on that rumble strip is pretty minimal. Most of the time the roadway is straight, and if it is curved, I mean, again, you are just on the rumble strip for maybe not a fraction of a second, but a second or so. So it should be a pretty quick maneuver. And then additionally, as you mentioned, there are breaks between the artery, the main road, and then side streets. So wherever there's a side street, if you do need to turn and cross the center line, there is no rumble strip directly at the intersection. It's we take a break at the intersection and 25 feet in each direction. So there is no rumble strip that's in the way. So, the concern regarding that, at least at intersections, hopefully is, nullified with that. And then the other thing that I would like to mention is that this spec, I mean, I don't know if possibly you're thinking of the rumble strips on like the highway, the freeway, 91, 95, anything like that. But these are, much more shallower. I mean, if you went over the ones on the highway with the motorcycle, yeah, I could totally understand why there would be concerns, and I certainly wouldn't want to do that. But I've gone over rumble strips, the centerline rumble strips before on my bike, and haven't lost control or anything like that. But again, just keep in mind that it's not, as you ride, you're not supposed to stay on the center line. It's just supposed to be momentary, passing maneuver or whatever it is, and then return. And again, FHWA, there is some research on this, as far as it not being a safety issue, but just keep that in mind. But so the point is that these are much narrower, not narrower, I'm sorry, they're spaced further apart, so they're less intrusive as you ride than the ones on the highway. Let's see, it looks like we have well, there's a raised hand. I don't know if there's a way to allow someone to speak directly at this from the audience. From Ted, I'm trying to think here.
Yeah, the way we set them up through communications, I'm not sure if we can. If Ted, if it's possible for you to type your question in the Q&A.
So there's a button here. Ted, if you do have a microphone, I found a button here that supposedly lets you talk. We've never actually used this function before because people typically just type their questions in or, call and leave a voicemail. But I'm going to push this button and let's see what happens. All right. So you've been added to the speaker list essentially, and now it looks like you've been unmuted. So let's see if we can hear you.
Can we possibly hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
Yes, how are you?
Good. How's it going?
My question is, I live on Young Street, 261 Young Street. When you guys paved, shortly after the recent paving, equipment came through here one evening and it seems like they put in some type of a rumble strip. Because now when cars go over the center line in front of my house, if we have a window open, we can hear it loud and clear. Has anything like that been done, or is that just a result of the paving?
There shouldn't have been anything done.
So
Because there was a group of trucks that came through one evening about 11, 12 o'clock at night and, making a similar noise as to what would be done installing these rumble strips. I'm a retired public works employee, so I have a rough idea of what's going on.
Yep.
And
I mean,
now, like I say, when if you drive your car over the center line, it makes that loud vibrating noise to let you know. And it can be heard from my house is about 75 feet from the road, and it can be heard loud and clear on an evening when you have windows open.
Yep. So, I mean, I have just a Google, Street View image open here. It looks like the image was from October of 2024. So it is very recent, relatively recent anyway. And I'm not seeing anything on it. The only thing I could think of, since, the paving was just regular paving work, standard pavement
Right.
replacement essentially. I wonder if, since you're specifically talking about large trucks, I wonder if they may have been Jake braking, because there is a pretty
No. These were trucks. They all had their orange lights going and everything else, and
okay,
they were working down the center of the road.
gotcha.
Yeah,
This was a
so-
process that was continued down through.
Yeah, hi Ted. This is Rob Smith talking again. So
Yes.
that's when what we're doing is we're recessing the epoxy pavements now in the the epoxy pavement markings. So prior to the edge line and the center line being installed, they grind a little bit out of the wearing surface.
Okay.
That way, because the epoxy pavements, they sit up a little bit right off the surface of the road, and they also have the retroreflective glass beads in them to make them more visible at night. So basically, they recess those a little bit. I'm pretty sure that's related to preserving them for when the plows come over. But Natasha's
Yeah,
also on this call. She can
primarily
let me know. But yeah,
Yeah.
so that's what that was. The centerline rumble strips will be a little bit more ground down than that.
So they'll be even, because like I said, just by doing this recessing thing, whatever you want to call this, with the new pavement, that does create quite a noise when you go over it.
Okay, hopefully then people, because inside the car, when I've driven over those, and I drove on 196 and I drove on the one that's on the edge line, and I could tell when I was on it. But it's definitely inside the car, not nearly as loud as the centerline rumble strips are inside the car. So I kind of have a feeling, I think that when someone drives on the actual centerline rumble strips, that's a lot more disruptive to the driver, and so they're going to avoid that center line a lot more than they would.
Right. So what about quality of life for the residents that are closer to the road?
So
As
I
far as-
understand your concern, Ted. I guess one of the things that, I'm thinking about as soon as I hear what you're saying is that you have people driving over the center line for, I don't know what reason, because there is no passing zone in this area. I realize that it's a pretty narrow roadway. And then the reason that, the pavement markings are recessed is specifically to, extend the life of the pavement markings, as Rob was saying, because the epoxy that we use, by having it go under it lasts a little bit longer when paving happens and things like that.
Right.
recessing it. And then, you know, the other thing that Rob mentioned, and Yi as well, is that, you know, we do take the residential density into account when we look at this. And, you know, this road in general, I mean, there are a few houses along it, but they are, I know you mentioned your house is 75 feet back. You know, I can't confirm that right now without, you know, measuring it obviously, but I do know that we look for the majority of the homes to be at least 100 feet away. And that's just a general rule of thumb. But with the new spec that we have, again, we changed our spec in 2021. Previously, it was just your standard centerline rumble strip spec. Now it's the sinusoidal spec, or it's called a mumble strip, if you will. That's what, you know, some of the practitioners refer to it now. And, you know, the reason for that is specifically because it is quieter than the old type of rumble strip that we used to install. So by having it be a sinusoidal wave, you know, a sine wave, it is supposed to be significantly quieter. So the 100 feet that we're using as the general rule of thumb is actually carried over from the older spec, and we kind of just kept it for this, even though this is a quieter rumble strip. So I mean, as you can see from the photo, there is the recessing is obviously present in this, so it is a little bit deeper, but the sine wave of it essentially kind of negates some of the noise as the tire comes into contact with it. But again, really, I think the point we want to drive home is that this is, you know, one, a proactive solution that we're looking to do. So if you're telling me that you hear, you know, vehicles driving over the center line at midnight, I mean, that's kind of what we're not looking for, obviously, but that's exactly why, you know, something like this would want to be pursued by us, essentially.
Yeah, but would it really stop it? You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of people ride the middle of the road, or they ride the edge of the road. You know what I'm saying? It's just the way they drive. You know,
Yeah.
I'm not saying an impaired driver or something like that,
Right.
but
Right.
you know,
So
my biggest concern, like I said, was quality of life for the residents that are closer to the road.
yeah, and if this is a location where, you know, there's already enough kind of shoulder space, right? And we install the rumble strips and people are continuing to go over the center line, then that's definitely something, you know, that we would want to have more of a discussion with the town, and whether that means a little bit more enforcement there, or putting out some of those, you know, your speed signs that we got going, to slow people down, because that's a real problem. If people are still going over the center line, even while the rumble strips are out there, you know, eventually that's going to lead to a crash, right?
Yeah.
So for sure, you know, these are not, you know, these aren't going to solve all the problems. And if it seems like there's still people crossing over the center line routinely in one particular spot, yeah, that's a conversation we definitely want to have with the town, and probably the PD, and kind of figure out, you know, some other strategies.
Yeah. No, I've been in this house for 30 plus years now, and this section of 196 is a speedway. You get people blowing their horns when you're trying to slow down to pull in your driveway and everything else. So, but
Yeah, I mean,
you know,
you know, and most of the time when we have these meetings in general, the biggest concern is the noise, and then it turns out that, you know, the noise is actually predicated by the speeding and the kind of the reckless driving that's going on in the area. So, you
right,
know, unfortunately, as the DOT, we don't have a whole lot. I mean, we could put up a million signs, a million rumble strips, whatever, but at the end of the day, we don't have the power to, you
right,
know, enforce
right.
anything. So, essentially, I mean, look, Ted, you know, we appreciate the comment. We're gonna, you know, nothing's getting installed tomorrow. Obviously, we're having this public info
Right.
meeting to get input from the public. You know, obviously we had a few questions that came in and a few emails, and again, the public information window for asking additional questions is open for the next 2 weeks. So essentially, you know, between now and then, we're taking everything that comes into us into consideration before we, you know, come up with our final decision, and then, you know, we kind of go from there. But just keep that in mind, that this isn't the be all end all. We're
Yeah.
holding this specifically so that people have a chance to voice their opinions, and again, we do take into account.
All righty. Well, then I thank you very much.
Yeah, no, thank you for letting us know. And you know, this, as far as the speeding goes, I mean, I don't know how East Hampton PD is, or if there's anyone on the call from there, but you know, maybe worth mentioning to them as well, if
Yeah.
just in case they aren't aware.
All righty. I
All right,
thank you.
thank you, Ted. All right, let me see if we have any other additional questions that have come in. In the meantime, I do want to, thank everybody for coming to this event, and I'm gonna quickly remind you that you can ask questions in the chat through the Zoom live event chat. You can also contact us again within the next 2 weeks via email at dot2025 clrs-easthampton@ct.gov, or by phone if you want to leave a voicemail, 860-594-2020. If you do leave a voicemail, please just mention that it has to do with the East Hampton Centerline Rumble Strip project. I would also like to remind and encourage everyone to participate in the brief survey at the link on the project webpage, which is again portal.ct.gov/DOT172-537 East Hampton. And just, if you have any input on how this meeting went, feel free to let us know, please. Again, the public comment period for this presentation is open through the 30th, which is 2 weeks from now, and we will be reviewing all voicemails and emails within that time frame, but the live chat option, as mentioned, is only available during this meeting. Let's see. So I'm not seeing any additional questions. We are checking our emails and voicemails, as we're going through this tonight, but we're not seeing anything additional. So I wanted to thank everybody for joining us tonight. Hopefully this was an informative, use of everybody's time. Again, it's January 30th. The 2-week period starts today. Questions can be sent to us at the project email. Again, DOT2025 CLRS-easthampton@ct.gov, or by phone at 860-594-2020. Our project website does have some information, such as the copy of the presentation, copies of the aerial images showing the extents of the proposed rumble strips, and then a link to the survey again, which we are encouraging everyone to fill out. If there's no more questions, so I just want to thank everybody again for your time and for listening to us, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your night. Have a good night. Thank you.